You know what they say about desperate times? They make you do stupid things. And standing here, watching our 3rd Battalion get torn apart by the Krex swarm, I can confirm that saying is absolutely correct. My name is Vex, and I'm what you might generously call a military strategist for the Galactic Defense Coalition. What you might more accurately call me is a guy who's really, really bad at his job. Sir! Lieutenant Zara came sprinting across the battlefield, her purple scales glistening with what I hoped was sweat and not blood. The eastern flank is completely overrun. The humans sent reinforcements. But there. She paused, her 3 eyes blinking in confusion. They're laughing, sir. Laughing? I adjusted my tactical visor, trying to get a better view of the carnage below. The Krex were advancing like a black tide across the plains of Nexon 5, their chitinous bodies reflecting the dying light of our 2 suns. Why would they be laughing? We're losing! Through my scope, I could see the human contingent. 50 soldiers, maybe 60, facing down at least 3,000 Krex warriors. And yes, they were definitely laughing. Some were even taking what appeared to be selfies? Commander Vex, came a crackling voice through my comm unit. It belonged to General Thax, our 4-armed Delanian commander, who had about as much patience as a hungry sandworm. Please tell me you have good news. I looked at the battlefield again. Our Morvek heavy infantry were retreating in what could charitably be called strategic withdrawal, but looked suspiciously like screaming and running. Just one thing before we begin. YouTube tells me 94.3% of you watching aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free. It really supports the channel, and you'll get more amazing HFY sci-fi stories delivered straight to you. Don't miss out. The Nexari air support had been grounded after losing half their fighters in the first hour. And now these humans were taking pictures? Well, sir, I said slowly, the humans haven't retreated yet. That's because they're insane. General Thax's voice rose to that particular pitch that meant someone was about to get demoted. I've reviewed their files, Vex. These aren't even their elite forces. They're what they call weekend warriors, part-time soldiers. A massive explosion lit up the eastern front. Through the smoke, I could see a human soldier standing on top of what used to be a Krex heavy walker, holding something that looked like a tube with wires sticking out of it. She was waving at her friends. Actually, sir, Lieutenant Zara interrupted, pointing at her scanner, the human casualty reports are interesting. Define interesting, I said, though part of me didn't want to know. 0 casualties, sir. In fact, their medics are complaining about being bored. This had to be some kind of mistake. The Krex swarm had never, in 300 years of galactic warfare, failed to cause massive casualties in the opening hour of any engagement. They were 6-foot-tall insectoid killing machines with natural armor plating and enough venom to kill a Nexari elephant. The idea that a group of part-time human soldiers were holding them off without losses was another explosion. This time, I saw a human female with bright red hair throw something that looked like a metal ball into a group of advancing Krex. When it detonated, it didn't just kill the immediate targets. It somehow created a chain reaction that took out an entire column. What was that? I demanded. Lieutenant Zara checked her readings again, her scales shifting to a nervous yellow color. According to the energy signature, sir, it appears to be what humans call a hand grenade. But they've modified it. Modified how? They've attached what their technical specifications list as extra boom stuff. I blinked all 4 of my eyes. Extra boom stuff is not a technical term, Lieutenant. It is according to the humans, sir. Through my comm came the sound of human voices, apparently broadcasting on an open channel. I tuned in, expecting to hear battle cries or desperate pleas for reinforcement. Instead, I got this. "Hey, Marcus! Watch this!" Followed by what sounded like someone laughing maniacally. "Holy shit, Jenny! Did you see how far that bug flew? Language, people! We're on an open channel." "Sorry, Sergeant Mills!" "But seriously, did you see that? I think I just invented Kreck's shot put." I looked at Lieutenant Zara. She looked back at me. Neither of us had any idea how to process what we were hearing. "Sir," she said carefully, "should we send them reinforcements?" Before I could answer, the human channel crackled again. "All right, people, fun's over. They're sending in the big ones now. Jenny, you still have those things your brother made?" "Which things? The explosive darts or the acid-filled water balloons?" "Both. Definitely both." "Acid-filled water balloons?" I whispered, but Lieutenant Zara was already pulling up the human equipment manifest. "Sir, according to their supply list, Specialist Jenny Martinez requisitioned various household items for tactical applications. The specifics are creative. I scrolled through the list myself. Cleaning supplies, kitchen utensils, children's toys, and what appeared to be enough duct tape to wrap a small moon. Either these humans were the most unprepared soldiers in galactic history, or they knew something the rest of us didn't. The answer became clear about 30 seconds later. A Kreck's Broodmother emerged from the main swarm, a 20-foot-tall monstrosity that looked like someone had crossed a spider with a tank and then given it anger management issues. These things were walking nightmares, capable of tearing through our best armor like tissue paper. The humans stopped laughing. For about 5 seconds. Then Specialist Jenny Martinez stepped forward, pulled something from her pack, and yelled, "Hey, ugly! Catch!" What she threw looked like a children's toy, specifically one of those colorful spinning discs that human offspring play with. But as it flew through the air, it began to emit a high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. The disc struck the Broodmother square in what passed for its face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature exploded. Not just died, exploded into tiny pieces with sparkles. The entire battlefield went silent. Even the Krecks seemed confused. "Did she just—" I started. "Kill a Broodmother with a Frisbee?" Lieutenant Zara finished. "Yes, sir." "Yes, she did." The human channel erupted in cheers. "Jenny, you magnificent psychopath! Where did you even get explosive Frisbees?" "Amazon, obviously. 2-day delivery to any active war zone." I was beginning to understand why humans had such a reputation among the galaxy's more civilized species. They weren't just unpredictable. They were creatively insane. General Thax's voice crackled through again. "Vex, what's your status?" The Krecks should have overrun that position by now. I looked at the tactical display. The human position was marked in green, meaning secure. Around them, red dots representing Kreck's forces were disappearing. Not retreating, not regrouping, just vanishing from sensors entirely. "Sir, the humans appear to be winning." "That's impossible. There are 50 of them, and 3,000 Krecks." As if summoned by his words, another voice joined our communication channel. Female, human, with that particular tone that suggested someone was having way too much fun. "Coalition Command. This is Sergeant Alex Mills, 47th Recreational Infantry. We've got a bit of a situation here." "Finally!" General Thax exclaimed. "What's your casualty report, Sergeant?" "Well, sir, that's the situation. We're running low on targets. The Krecks seem to be. How do I put this diplomatically? Getting their asses kicked." Through my scope, I could see Sergeant Mills standing calmly in the middle of what looked like a debris field made entirely of dead Creks. She was holding something that appeared to be a modified cooking pot with wires coming out of it. "Sergeant," I interrupted, "what is your current ammunition status?" "Oh, we're fine on ammo, Commander." "Turns out you can make really effective explosive devices out of cleaning supplies and birthday party decorations. Who knew?" I was starting to get a headache. "Sergeant Mills, how exactly are you defeating an enemy force 60 times your size?" "Honestly? We're not entirely sure, but Jenny's got this theory that their exoskeletons are vulnerable to specific frequency vibrations, so we've been testing it with modified household electronics. Marcus jury-rigged a microwave into what he calls a bug zapper deluxe, and it's been working pretty well." "A microwave?" Lieutenant Zara's voice cracked. "Yeah, you should see it. Point, click, and suddenly you've got Crek's jerky, though it does smell terrible." Another voice joined the channel. "Sarge, we've got movement from the main hive. Looks like they're sending everything they've got." Through my tactical scope, I could see what everything they've got meant. The horizon had turned black, with Crek's reinforcements, thousands upon thousands of them, including air support and what appeared to be some kind of massive siege weapons. "Well," Sergeant Mills said cheerfully, "this should be interesting. Hey, does anyone know if hairspray is flammable? Because I've got about 40 cans of the stuff, and this really neat idea." General Thax's voice cut across the chatter. "Sergeant Mills, you need to evacuate immediately. We're tracking at least 10,000 incoming hostiles." "With respect, sir, we're good." Besides, Jenny just remembered she brought her special project from home. "What special project?" I asked, though I was beginning to dread the answer. "Oh, you know, the usual. Homemade napalm, weaponized kitchen appliances, and what she calls her surprise party mix. Also, her little sister's chemistry set." "Her sister's chemistry set?" "Yeah, turns out 8-year-old humans are surprisingly creative when it comes to making things that explode. Who gives a kid that much sulfur anyway? I was getting that feeling you get when you realize you're watching something that should be impossible but is happening anyway. The humans weren't just fighting the Creks, they were having fun doing it." "Sir," Lieutenant Zara whispered, pointing at her scanner, "the Creks' advance has stopped." I looked at the tactical display. She was right. 10,000 Creks warriors had just stopped moving. They were still out there, still in formation, but they weren't advancing. "Sergeant Mills, what's your current tactical situation?" "Funny thing about that, Commander. We're not entirely sure what's happening, but the bugs seem to be. Well, they're just standing there. Marcus thinks they're having some kind of conference. Through the scope, I could indeed see what appeared to be a gathering of Crek's leadership units. They were chittering at each other in their insectoid language, waving their arms around in what looked suspiciously like panic. "Lieutenant," I said slowly, "patch me through to our xenolinguistics department. I need to know what they're saying." A few minutes later, Doctor. Korvac's translated voice came through our speakers, sounding as confused as I felt. The Creks appear to be arguing. The translation is imperfect, but they seem to be saying things like, "The Pinkskins are insane," and "Nothing we know works against them," and "Wait, this can't be right." "What is it, Doctor?" "They're calling them the demons who turn household objects into weapons of mass destruction." The human channel crackled again. "Hey, Command, you might want to see this. The bugs are waving some kind of white flag." I nearly dropped my communicator. "They're surrendering?" "Looks like it. Though I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed. Jenny was just about to test her latest creation. She calls it the dish soap of doom. General Thax's voice was barely a whisper. The Krex swarm is surrendering to 50 part-time human soldiers. Technically, sir, Sergeant Mills corrected, it's 49. Rodriguez is still on lunch break. And that's when I realized something that would fundamentally change how I viewed humans forever. They weren't just dangerous because they were unpredictable or creative or willing to turn children's toys into weapons of war. They were dangerous because they treated war like it was just another weekend activity. As I watched Jenny Martinez walk up to the largest Krex commander with what appeared to be a modified garden sprayer and a smile that promised terrible, terrible things, I made a mental note to recommend that the Coalition never, ever fight against humans. Because, honestly, I'm not sure the galaxy would survive it. Sir, Lieutenant Zara said quietly, what do we put in the report? I looked at the battlefield, where human soldiers were now taking group photos with surrendering Krex warriors, and sighed. The truth, Lieutenant, though I doubt anyone will believe it. But this was only the beginning. Because, as Sergeant Mills would later inform me, this was just their light engagement loadout. Apparently, they hadn't even brought the really fun stuff. I was starting to understand why the rest of the galaxy was so terrified of these creatures. 3 hours later, I was sitting in the Coalition command bunker, staring at a cup of something that claimed to be coffee, but tasted like liquid regret. The victory celebration was supposed to be happening right about now, but instead, we had a new problem. A much bigger problem. Commander Vex, General Thax burst through the blast doors, his forearms gesticulating wildly. We have a situation that makes this morning's Krex invasion look like a pleasant afternoon picnic. I looked up from my tactical reports, which currently read like a fever dream. Sir, with all due respect, I'm not sure anything could be worse than watching 50 humans defeat 10,000 Krex with kitchen appliances. The Hegemony fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. My coffee cup hit the floor with a ceramic crash that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent command center. The Hegemony weren't just another alien species with territorial ambitions. They were the galactic equivalent of that neighbor who burns down your house because your lawn ornaments offended their aesthetic sensibilities. How many ships? I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to know. 200, including 3 World Render-class dreadnoughts. Lieutenant Zara, who had been quietly updating tactical displays, turned pale green, which for a Nexari meant she was either terrified or about to molt. Sir, that's enough firepower to glass half the planet. It gets worse, General Thax continued, his voice dropping to that tone reserved for announcing galactic disasters. They're demanding the immediate surrender of what they're calling the human weapon stockpile, and the execution of anyone involved in what they term crimes against conventional warfare. I blinked all 4 eyes slowly. They want to execute the humans for winning too creatively. Apparently, turning household items into military-grade explosives violates 17 different intergalactic warfare conventions. The Hegemony Council has declared them a clear and present danger to civilized combat methodology. Through the command bunker's reinforced windows, I could see the Hegemony fleet, dark shapes blotting out the stars like mechanical vultures. Each ship was larger than our entire orbital defense platform, bristling with enough weaponry to reduce a planet to its component atoms. Sir, Lieutenant Zara interrupted, incoming transmission from Sergeant Mills. Put her through. The familiar, cheerfully unhinged voice of the human sergeant crackled through our speakers. Hey there, Command! So, we've got these new visitors in orbit, and they seem pretty upset about something. They keep broadcasting surrender demands in what sounds like really aggressive elevator music. Sergeant Mills, General Thax said urgently, you need to evacuate your position immediately. The Hegemony fleet has weapons that could vaporize this entire continent. Oh, those guys! Yeah, we noticed them. Big ships, lots of angry chittering over the comms. Jenny thinks their music is terrible, by the way. She's got some suggestions for better surrender demand soundtracks. I rubbed my temples, feeling the onset of what promised to be a legendary headache. Sergeant, this isn't a joke. The Hegemony has enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. You're facing impossible odds. Funny thing about impossible odds, Commander, they tend to get a lot more possible once Jenny breaks out her advanced projects. Speaking of which, she wanted me to ask, do you guys have any old satellites lying around? She's got this theory about orbital mechanics and really big explosions. Satellites? Lieutenant Zara checked her inventory database. We have several decommissioned communication satellites in high orbit. Why? Jenny's got this idea about what she calls kinetic party favors. Something about turning space junk into what she terms really impressive fireworks. Also, does anyone know where we can get about 50 tons of glitter? It's for a science experiment. General Thax stared at me. I stared back. Neither of us had any frame of reference for a conversation where someone casually requested industrial quantities of glitter while facing down a fleet capable of planetary annihilation. Sergeant Mills, I said carefully, exactly what is your plan here? Well, Marcus has been working on scaling up his microwave bug zapper thing, and he thinks he can create what he calls a really big frequency pulse. Jenny's handling the kinetic bombardment calculations, and Rodriguez finally got back from lunch with some interesting ideas about magnetic field manipulation. Rodriguez was on lunch break during a galactic invasion? Hey, the man takes his sandwich time seriously, but he brought back some neat stuff from the local electronics store. Turns out you can buy components for a makeshift EMP generator at any consumer electronics outlet. Who knew? The Hegemony fleet began moving into attack formation. Through the tactical display, I could see their dreadnoughts charging their main weapons, planet-cracking energy beams that could turn continents into molten slag. Sergeant, General Thax said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic, you have maybe 10 minutes before they open fire. Please tell me you have some kind of actual military strategy. Define actual military strategy, sir. A plan that doesn't involve modified household appliances. Oh, well, in that case, no. But Jenny did find something interesting in the Coalition's old equipment storage. Apparently, you guys have been sitting on some really fascinating defensive technology. Lieutenant Zara's scanner beeped urgently. Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildups from the storage depot where the humans are positioned. Whatever they're doing, it's generating power readings that are mathematically questionable. Through my scope, I could see the humans moving around their improvised base with purpose that looked suspiciously like they actually knew what they were doing. Jenny Martinez was standing next to what appeared to be a massive satellite dish that had been decorated with Christmas lights and connected to a kitchen microwave with enough cables to wire a small city. Sergeant Mills, what exactly are you powering up down there? Oh, the usual. We found some old Coalition defense satellites that nobody was using, and Marcus figured out how to network them together with some really creative wiring. Jenny added her special modifications, and Rodriguez contributed what he calls his lunch break inspiration. Which is what, exactly? Well, you know how EMP pulses can disable electronic systems? Rodriguez figured out how to make one big enough to affect an entire fleet. The trick was scaling up the power source and adding what he calls directional enthusiasm. Directional enthusiasm? Yeah, it's a technical term. Means making the explosion go where you want it to, instead of where it wants to go. The Hegemony fleet finished charging their weapons. Through the tactical display, I could see energy readings that made my scales itch just looking at them. In approximately 30 seconds, this entire region of space was going to become a very bright, very brief light show. All human personnel, General Thack's broadcast on emergency channels, this is your final evacuation warning. Move to minimum safe distance immediately. Thanks for the heads up, sir, but we're good. Jenny just finished calibrating her orbital surprise package, and Marcus says his giant bug zapper is ready for field testing. Giant bug zapper? It's what he's calling the satellite network. Turns out those old coalition defense platforms weren't just communication arrays. They were designed to generate focused electromagnetic pulses. Marcus just had to convince them to pulse a little more enthusiastically than originally intended. Lieutenant Zara's scanner erupted in alarms. Sir, I'm reading power buildups that exceed theoretical maximums. Whatever the humans have created, it's generating more energy than our main planetary reactor. Through the scope, I watched Jenny Martinez flip what appeared to be a switch made from a light dimmer and some copper wire. The satellite dish began to glow with an eerie blue light that made my optical sensors water. Fire! Came the Hegemony commander's voice over intercepted communications. 200 ships opened fire simultaneously. The space between the fleet and the planet filled with enough destructive energy to sterilize a dozen worlds. And then Jenny Martinez smiled and pressed a button that looked like it came from a children's toy. What happened next defied several fundamental laws of physics and at least one galactic convention on acceptable levels of property damage. The improvised satellite network activated with a sound like the universe clearing its throat. A pulse of electromagnetic energy erupted from the planet's surface, channeled through the orbital defense platforms, and focused into a beam that made our planetary defense cannons look like flashlights. The Hegemony fleet's devastating attack simply stopped. Every energy beam, every plasma bolt, every planet-cracking weapon discharge froze in mid-space and began to glow with the same blue light emanating from Jenny's improvised doomsday device. Now comes the fun part, Sergeant Mills announced cheerfully. Jenny, hit the other button. Which other button? Jenny's voice crackled through the comm. The one labeled Return to Sender. Jenny pressed another button. This one definitely came from a children's toy. I could see the colorful plastic and what looked like cartoon characters on the side. Every single energy attack from the Hegemony fleet reversed direction and flew back toward the ships that fired them. But not at their original power levels. The electromagnetic pulse had somehow amplified each attack by what the tactical computer calculated as a ridiculously large amount. The Hegemony fleet found themselves on the receiving end of their own planet-killing weapons, magnified to a degree that turned their dreadnoughts into very expensive fireworks displays. The silence that followed was broken only by Jenny Martinez's voice. Did I mention I used to work at a solar panel installation company? You learn interesting things about energy reflection and amplification when you're trying to maximize power efficiency. 200 Hegemony warships had been disabled by what was essentially a weaponized solar panel array connected to kitchen appliances and powered by what Rodriguez apparently learned during lunch. Break. Status report, General Thax whispered. Hegemony fleet is completely disabled, sir. No casualties reported. Their ships are intact, but dead in space. Also, they appear to be requesting permission to surrender. They want to surrender? According to the translation, They're specifically asking for mercy from the terrifying pink demons who control the fundamental forces of the universe. Also, several ship commanders are inquiring about possible career changes. I stared at the tactical display, where 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy were now drifting helplessly, while their crews presumably re-evaluated their life choices. "Sergeant Mills," I said slowly, "please tell me this was your maximum effort deployment." "Oh, heavens no, Commander. This was just what Jenny calls her weekend project setup. She's got much more interesting ideas back home, but shipping costs to active war zones are terrible, and her homeowner's insurance doesn't cover galactic incidents." "What kinds of more interesting ideas?" "Well, her 12-year-old nephew has been working on what he calls improved chemistry experiments, and Jenny's been helping him with the theoretical applications. Also, her neighbor's a retired aerospace engineer who gets bored easily." I looked at General Thax. He looked back at me. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. Finally, Lieutenant Zara broke the silence. "Sir, what do we put in the report this time?" I watched as human soldiers began taking group photos with the disabled Hegemony fleet in the background, while Jenny Martinez appeared to be autographing what looked like pieces of her improvised doomsday device. "The truth again, Lieutenant, and a strongly worded recommendation that the Coalition immediately establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth." "What kind of diplomatic relations, sir?" "The kind where we make sure they're always on our side. Because if there was one thing I'd learned today, it was that humans didn't just break the rules of conventional warfare, they took those rules, turned them into origami sculptures, and then used them as components in even more terrifying weapons. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice was wondering what would happen when these weekend warriors finally decided to bring their serious equipment. I decided that was a question I really didn't want answered. "Lieutenant Zara," I said finally, "draft a memo to Coalition Command. Subject: immediate reclassification of human military capabilities from enthusiastic amateurs to don't ask how they do it, just be grateful they're friendly." "Yes, sir. Anything else?" I looked out at the stars, where disabled Hegemony ships were still drifting like cosmic debris, their crews presumably still trying to figure out how they'd been defeated by what amounted to an arts and crafts project with delusions of grandeur. "Send a gift basket to Earth. Something nice. Maybe some of those fancy chocolates from the Centauri sector." "What's the occasion, sir?" "Call it a preemptive peace offering. Because honestly, after today, I was pretty sure the rest of the galaxy owed humanity a very large thank you note for being on our side, even if we still had no idea how they did what they did, or what they might do next."